So the castle was originally built in the 1920s
by a Chicago mob figure,
Al Capone's bookkeeper, who built it as a summer home for him and his family.
But the trip from kind of Chicago down to the Nashville area just wasn't a trip his family wanted to make, so it kind of turned into a halfway house for Al Capone's bootlegging operation, kind of, down to the Gulf and all that kind of stuff, and kind of a boys' hangout.
Where like him and his mobster buddies would come out here and drink and gamble. And they did actually try to turn it into like a legit underground casino speakeasy.
That got shut down pretty quickly.
The sheriff ended up coming out, raiding the place and shutting her down. Then after that, in the 40s, I believe, it was a high-end restaurant for a little while.
We have a menu from when the castle was a restaurant, and it's all just steak, 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 cocktails, cocktails.
And then it was just a farmhouse. I think there's a riding academy at one point. And then in the 1980s, the Nuyens family from Belgium, who was actually a family bluegrass band, they came, moved to Nashville, bought the place, ended up turning it into a studio in 1983, and we've been here ever since. Since its first opening, we've recorded over 500 gold and platinum records here. Anyone from like Brad Paisley has done most of his early work here, a lot of Alan Jackson. I mean, we've had Snoop Dogg do a feature here, Miley Cyrus, Billy Ray cut Achy Breaky Heart here. We've had Dolly Parton, Megadeth, Fish recorded an album here. Kind of runs the gambit, but yeah, a lot of cool music's been made here.
Well, a lot of the cool projects I've witnessed here have been like Alan Jackson's last record. That was really cool to kind of like be in the room with a lot of the old school OG, like really popular session guys. Every time we have a session with, the really top of the line Nashville players, like that's something that like doesn't really get old for me, just because I come in and it's like, man, these are some of the best musicians in the world, and it's like Tuesday, and they're just doing their job. But even then, like we've had Newfound Glory cut their last full-length LP here, and that was like a really exciting project to sort of be in the background on. I'm not listed on the album, but I am in the gang vocals. They're sort of like, you just want to like come yell with us? And I'm like, sure, yeah, just one of my favorite bands like ever. So yeah, I'll come scream on your record.
One of the most fun sessions that I've been on still to this day is when Chris Stapleton came out with Vance Powell, Dave Cobb to work on the Traveler record. And most of that was cut at a different studio, but they came out here for a day, I think, just to kind of have some fun, do something a little bit off the wall. And one of the songs we worked on was Might As Well Get Stoned. And if you listen to the beginning of that track, you hear a lot of crickets, you hear kind of cars moving around, and it's because they cut it outside. Chris and Dave were out on the front porch, acoustic vocals, like everybody going down live. And you listen to that track, you hear, drums in the middle of the big room, mics out behind the studio, mics out in front of the studio, and you feel that in the track. Another one that they cut here was Daddy Doesn't Pray Anymore, which I just remember sitting kind of in the back of the room, trying to stay out of the way, you guys, do your thing, and trying not to cry hearing that song, because it was just so beautiful. And it's 3 guys in a room going down live. It's just one of my favorite musical experiences that I've had here.
So this SSL, it's actually the 3rd console we've had in the studio. We first had an old Harrison board, and then an SSL E-Series, which was actually the first SSL in Nashville. And then we moved this one in, I believe in the mid-90s, and it's been rock solid and making great music ever since.
So the SSL that we have here is an SSL 4000 G Plus series. Kind of the difference between like the G Plus and the 4000 G series would be that this is a G series console, but with E series EQs. So you kind of have the the bell notch instead of like the divide and ×3, on the what you would find on like a normal G series EQ.
And still, it's like the preferred desk for mixing just anything really, but it's also a great cutting desk.
I mean, I've worked on a lot of sessions, and pretty much every session engineers do it differently. So they're just, a studio like this where we're doing a wide variety of sessions, it's kind of the perfect console because you can do anything any which way that you want to.
I love it because it's kind of the quintessential rock, country, just large format tracking console to me. It's an inline console. My favorite EQs in the world are these SSL EQs. They're 4-band parametric, high and low pass. You can get yourself into some trouble more easily than an API or a Neve, but man, you can really dig in and get some sounds here.
So one of the great things about working on a real analog desk is all the subtle differences that you get when mixing on like an SSL. I mean, every single channel sounds a little bit different from the rest, and that's kind of one of the things that really helps everything meld together.
A 5K bell on channel 12 is not going to sound just like a 5K bell on channel 20. The monitor side of channel 1 is a lot different than what it'll sound like coming out 48. There's 20 years of music been pumped through this thing, and you can hear that effect throughout the board.
We got some great outboard gear here that gets used on a regular basis. We have 4 channels of Neve 1095s, which is basically like 1081s, but with slightly different EQ points. They just have this great, they're a class AB, so they have a nice, thick, transformered sound to them. We also have a pair of 1063s, which are in the pack that they're like 1073s, but same thing, slightly different EQ points. We also have a great pair of 1176 revision Gs. They're probably the best pair of 1176s that I've heard, especially on electric guitar. That's like the go-to thing out here, is we always run those through the electric guitar through those things.
And one of them had coffee spilt into it at some point in the 90s. It got most of the brunt of the coffee, and it is a more trashy kind of sounding 1176, and the contrast of the two is, because every piece of vintage gear, every preamp is going to sound different. It's going to have different characteristics, and working here for such a long time, you can really kind of hone in on what should go where.
In terms of other outboard pieces, we have our ISA 110s that are racked up, as well as, we have our Dr. Alien Smith dirt box over there that we used for kind of like our trash chain, as well as just kind of our selections of LA2As and stuff like that.
We also got a great collection of old Pultecs. And I mean, they're just like, good old vibe boxes. Run anything through it, don't even have to EQ it, and it just does something magical to it, Pair of vintage 160s, DVX 160s with the VU. Those are great boxes, great on drums, anything that you want kind of a fast, aggressive sound on. We also have a pair of Sphere preamps from an actual Sphere console. Sphere was a local company here in Nashville that built consoles back in the 70s. Only made a handful, but they really left their mark, and it's pretty cool to have a pair of those that are actually from the real deal. What you can expect from this expansion pack is not only access to this incredible gear that's been on hundreds of hit records, but it's really the vibe and essence and the sound of Castle Recording Studios. I mean, the list goes on and on of artists and engineers who have taken this gear and used it to create hits over the years here. So a lot of the chains in the expansion pack are chains that we use on a daily basis that have been kind of like dialed in like over years and over multiple sessions, figuring out what works best and kind of what chains sound the best for certain things on, you know, certain applications. And so really it is just years of experience of not only our engineers, but us being able to spend time and watch other engineers and glean information from them. So yeah, the chains that we have, I mean, they're really unique and dialed in for what it is we do here.
So for the SSL section of the expansion pack, you know, we took all 48 channels plus the A through G sections, and each channel, you know, based on its use and the amount of wear it's collected over the years, will affect the tonality and the harmonic information of that channel strip. You know, like our first 24 get used a lot more than, you know, the last 24. And so those are getting, you know, all those switches are going to be pretty regularly engaged and clean, whereas like, you know, you might find yourself with some dusty switches over on this end, things that, you know, can sometimes be problematic, but sometimes add a little bit more grit, you know, into the signal just from a lack of use, you know, but just from years of people throwing signals at them, potentially kind of driving those channels. You know, it's every channel gets hit differently every session. And so as a result, over time, you know, the components are physically kind of being worn differently, which results in that variation that I feel like is pretty accurately represented in, you know, the plug-in pack.
Having emulations of different channels, it's more realistic. It's going to sound more like you're working on this console.
In terms of the control hub presets relating to the original signal chains, I mean, in particular, like our trash chain that we captured for you guys featuring the dirt box, and it was, I think, a distressor in there. I mean, it was kind of crazy. I mean, that was like spot on to what it sounds like when we use it during a session. You know, I threw it on in like a drum room, and like just the EQ response, you know, it was there. And I feel like, especially, you know, like with the sphere trash, you know, if you drive a sphere in a session on like a mono drum room, it, you know, it retains a lot of low end character, a lot of body, but, you know, it gets real gritty up at the top. And I was kind of throwing it on some mono room stuff, you know, in the box, and, you know, it was there, and it, you know, added the exact same sort of nuance and character that I would look for, you know, in a tracking session.
I was particularly impressed with the sound of like the Neve channel strips and like switching between like the 1095s and the 1063s, and then something that's transformerless. You can really hear the tonal difference that the transformer adds, or the transformer differences between the different channel strips. It was really cool, and it does kind of line up exactly with the qualities that I have in my head. Like if I'm reaching for the 1095, I want a little bit of that extra transformer warmth, that little low-end bump. That's exactly what I got in the plugin, so it was really cool to see that translate.
I think people would like this expansion pack. Mainly just, I mean, it just gives you access to so many pieces that most people probably wouldn't have access to on a regular basis, or even in a lot of studios. You know, I've been fortunate enough to work in a lot of studios around Nashville, and, you know, I've never seen another set of 1095s. You know, I've never seen another set of 1063s. You know, so, you know, a lot of pieces that are pretty unique to Castle that people kind of have access to now, just straight in their DAWs.
I think this is a great format to get sounds quick, to get where you want to be efficiently and make powerful decisions in one plugin. Get good sounds, you know? You can do a lot by digging in on something. You don't always need a sample to make something sound impressive. You can, you know, use saturation use effect, like lean into some sounds to bring out character, and don't be afraid to try strange things. There's an endless ability to, try different things and find what works for any particular track.